Hey, thanks for joining me. You know, in a way, all this time covering the Savage Dragon, we're up to issue 31 here. I've been working on the Dragon title since I started my channel, so over 3 years now. In some ways, there's no issue of this book that I've been more excited to get to than this one right here. I mention it every time that I do an issue of Savage Dragon, how there's an argument to be made that it's my favorite comic book ever. It was definitely my favorite comic book coming out from the original Image founders. No one knew more about what they were doing and how to craft a cohesive, coherent story that knew where it was going and how to do it, and everything just felt perfectly balanced. Now, that all kind of depends on what your personal likes and dislikes are, sure, but Larson knew what he was doing. He knows how to write a story. He knows how to tell a interesting action-adventure comic book story at the same time as having like genuine kind of moments of humanity and sadness and joy and romance and all that type of stuff. It's not just punch, 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 punch. But he can interject all kinds of interesting stuff. And one of my favorite things that he can do is throw in the humor, the absolutely ridiculous, fun, over-the-top silliness that has literally made me laugh out loud in a way that no other comic book series has, or had me stop in shock and go, holy shit, what did he just do in this comic? Can't believe it. I am a huge fan of this damn series. And like I said, this one, it's kind of the culmination of just like Eric Larson getting all these things together, all these story points, and his sense of humor just coming together in a story that I'm like, I can't believe this is actually happening. To bring us back up to speed, in the previous issue, so Savage Dragon, he got captured by the villains, and basically he was killed and he got sent to hell. And then he is falling into hell at the same time as Spawn, Todd McFarlane's Spawn. I think I was asking this I was wondering aloud in the last video. If I remember correctly, round about the exact same time, I think Spawn got killed and went to hell himself. I seem to remember that being a thing, but I could be wrong. But so however that conversation went down, if that's the case, that Spawn in his title was going to hell at the same time, why not just have them kind of go to hell together? And they just kind of tell their own stories. I mean, it's hell. It's kind of a alternate universe world where they could have different kind of experiences in each comic, which I'm pretty sure is what happened. But Dragon goes to hell, meets up with Spawn, and they just have they fight, they talk, they piss and moan at each other. There's a pit of the damned writhing in agony. The funny thing is that Dragon doesn't believe for a second that what he's seeing is real. He thinks he's just having a dream or a hallucination. So he just laughs it off. Meanwhile, stick in the mud Spawn, boring blabbermouth, when he's not complaining, he's crying. He's down there in hell trying to tell Dragon that everything is horrible and you need to take this seriously. And Dragon just don't give a fuck. So, they have their whole adventure. I've done a whole video on this. But it ends with Dragon meeting up with the Fiend. This is the character that actually killed him and got him sent into hell. And then it ended, I was talking about this, with this interesting kind of last final splash page of Dragon facing off against Overlord. Dragon fought this guy on Earth, killed him. So now, of course, Overlord is in hell. But now he's like super Overlord. And there was this interesting thing that Larson did where the last page of issue 30 is connected to the first page of 31, the book we're about to look at. And I thought this was a really interesting thing that I've never seen anyone else do, where the last page of one book is connected to the first page of the next book. It's a really interesting kind of idea. But I don't think any of us knew that until we got issue 31, and the opening page if you're paying attention to the art and the composition, let me set that aside. You flip it open, there's just an arm there. And if you're kind of looking at it and paying attention, you're like, that makes no sense. That's so weird. But anyway, Dragon is in hell, and he's got to face off against Overlord, who was his biggest nemesis. But on the cover, it shows God fighting the devil. And it literally says that, God versus the devil. I'm sitting here thinking when this comes out, I'm like, there's no way that's actually what's going to happen. Or is it, right? But we have to first off wrap up the story with Overlord, and then this is the Fiend. In the previous book, because the Fiend is a combination of two people, a demon from hell and a human woman that hates the dragon. And when she kind of keeps her focus, she's got like super hot, half-naked girl body, but a monster face. But when she kind of loses her focus and has to expend her power, she balloons up into this fat, gravity hogging, salad dodging, king-size balloon belly blubber biscuit right here with these giant monster knockers. So she's sitting there in the hellfire saying, pound the piss out of that little prick. That bastard molested my daughter and let her die. I made a deal with the devil to send his soul to hell, and he's going to suffer, damn it, if I have to armor up every demon in the whole place. Obliterate the dragon. So this has been a long-running storyline since the first couple issues of the Dragon regular series, not the mini-series, but the regular series. And it's all coming to a head now. I love Larson's art. I love the heavy shadows on this ridiculous body, the hair blowing up. It's so dynamic and interesting. It's just pure comic book art, pure comic book joy. So, again, Overlord, like in issue 7, when Dragon fought the Overlord, Overlord kicked his ass. Like, beat Dragon like wholeheartedly, like completely, like no question. Blew Dragon's arm off. Did he blow his arm off? He blew a hole through his guts. Yeah, blew his arm off and just basically ripped him apart, sent Dragon flying out of the building just to demonstrate how powerful Overlord was. But what's he like in hell? Well, he's standing there saying, kind of typical villain speech. He's like, thought you beat me? Thought you were rid of me? We're both dead. We're in hell. And now Antonio Seghetti is back on top. I am Overlord. I could take the pleasure in killing you over and over and over. And Overlord says, and you can, as you might put it, bite me. So Overlord's pointing his finger at Dragon. So Dragon just reaches up, bites his finger off, and spits it like a bullet through his head. Like just ending Overlord instantly. Now, how does that translate when you're already dead in hell? I don't know. I don't care. It's a comic book. Dragon blows his head off, kicks him off into hell. The Fiend is freaking out, saying, you'll pay for that and for what you did to my little girl. So, and then there's this momentary revelation that Dragon has. We get all these shattered glass images with a bunch of copy-pasted repeat images of the storyline with Debbie Harris, the girl that Dragon kind of had a brief relationship in the original miniseries, who got shot and killed, and then that girl's mother who blames Dragon for her death. And there's all this text explaining that Dragon's like, man, there's something about the way she said little girl. And then it all made sense. It all come together because we've never known, we know who the woman is. It's the mother. But the demon, the Fiend, who is that? Is it just a demon from hell, just a spirit? But Dragon doesn't know exactly, who the Fiend is. It's just a spirit. But when we flip the page, Dragon goes, Arnold Dimple, is that you? So Arnold Dimple is the guy who was the former boyfriend of Debbie Harris. This is kind of an important story point that comes up. This is a couple of years later and many issues after the fact. Because again, Debbie was shot in the head at the door of Dragon's apartment. There was a knock at the door. She opened it. She got shot, dropped dead. No one knew who killed her. It's always been a mystery. Well, we find out that it's her former boyfriend. He killed her. He didn't mean to. He just fired the gun at the first person who opened the door, thinking it would be the dragon. And it was his ex-girlfriend. And so then he turned the gun on himself. And then the other thing that's interesting is that the mother, Debbie's mother, has no idea that that's what happened. So they were kind of united in their hate for Dragon. But now the mother realizes that the man who actually shot her daughter was the boyfriend, and the mother hired the boyfriend. She hired the boyfriend, go kill Dragon. But then the boyfriend killed the daughter, but they didn't, the mom didn't know that. So now there are two entities in one body, and they're fighting each other. It's such an interesting twist. Like when I was reading this, I never saw that coming, that the guy who shot her was the boyfriend. Just was like, oh my gosh. And it's genius. It's hilarious. And it just kind of brings everything full circle. So Dragon just sits his dead naked ass on the ground and just watches as these two entities in one body kind of separate and start fighting each other. And Dragon's just laughing and making fun of her. He's like, hey, why don't you try resurrecting some more dead people to do your fighting for you, Arnold, you pussy. Maybe you should ruin her life like she ruined yours when she conned you into coming over to my apartment, gunning for me. That was your idea, wasn't it, Mrs. Harris? And she says, no, you won't ruin my life, you little creep. Our deal is off. I'm not going to spend the rest of eternity down here for you. And then there's this funny shot. I love all these expressions on Dragon's face. Like he's laughing here. And then that shot down there, that shot right there, the expression on Dragon's face. I just love it. And then, because she's saying that she's not going to spend her life in hell, and Dragon's like, ooh, the devil isn't going to like that. Big, scary devil. Dragon, again, he doesn't believe any of this is real. He just thinks he's dreaming, but he's just going along with it. And then, so the mother, she's like, screw the devil. What's he going to do about it? It's just not worth it. Well, shocked look on a face, and the devil shows up. And I love that drawing. I have made no bones about it that I do not like the version of the devil in McFarlane's Spawn comic, with the long hair and the no nose and the giant mouth and the pot belly. It's the least scary version of the devil I could ever imagine. Now, this version is essentially kind of a cliche version. Big red guy, kind of basically a human form with horns. But something about this version and the way that it's illustrated, there's such an epic power to it. This is way more interesting of a version of the devil than anything McFarlane ever did, in my opinion. But there is the devil. He shows up. He says, it's too late for regrets, Bonnie Harris. A deal is a deal. Your soul that the dragon will spend the rest of eternity here in hell. Down here at the bottom, the ground's erupting. And again, Dragon doesn't believe it. He's like, ooh, cool, special effects. 2 thumbs up. Dragon doesn't care. He's not worried about it in the slightest. So then Dragon is now standing there. There's these little floating rocks. And so Dragon says, I'd like to thank you all for contributing to the most vivid dream I've ever had. It was an outstanding job, really. You couldn't have been more thorough. This hell is really hellish. One question. Where did you get all of those Sonny Bono records? And again, I love this giant uplit face shot of the devil. And then here's the dragon, just a little tiny guy. So again, the devil is this giant monstrous entity. The devil says, your suffering hasn't even begun, mite. And Dragon says, sure it has. You can't get a hold of some breath mints around here, could you? And so the mom, Debbie Harris, or Debbie, it's Debbie Harris's mother. She says, this isn't a dream, you idiot. Now you've really done it. Dragon's like, look, if this is real and we really are really in hell, then what's the problem? You called off the deal. There's no sense in you spending eternity here when the real murderer is already doing time. Deal's off. Let's get out of here. The new fall season is about to start, and I just got cable hooked up. And the devil, he's like, you're not going anywhere, either of you. The deal cannot be broken. You have a contract. You signed it. Eternity begins today. So the devil's saying, like, no, Dragon, you guys can't just call off this deal. You're here. You're staying. There's nothing you can do about it. So, again, I really like the version of the devil here. He's kind of visually and kind of presence-wide appropriately ominous. I'm into it. I dig it. And he's saying, no, you're all staying here in hell. You are mine. Oh, shit. Double page spread. God shows up. Literally. Like, could there be bigger stakes in terms of hero and villain than literal God and the devil? What's interesting is that Erik Larson is a very vocal atheist. He does not think any of this stuff is true. But what I respect is that he will lean into the mythology, if you want to call it that, not trying to, piss off believers versus non-believers, just for the sake of conversation, the mythology of it, because according to Larson, none of this is real, but he leans into it, and he doesn't create an insulting, stupid version of the Almighty. He is kind of appropriately what a comic book, granted, it's just a comic book, right? Not to be taken literally or seriously, but it's a comic book version of God, but he doesn't make a mockery of it. And I respect that. I don't necessarily, not necessarily. There's a lot of opinions Erik Larson holds personally that I do not agree with. But I appreciate the fact that he writes a character or a story honestly. If there's going to be a story with God in it, he's going to kind of write it in the way that God would be. Whether or not this is a real situation that Dragon's experiencing or it's a dream, who knows? Who cares? It's written kind of honestly. So God shows up. No, my fallen friend, it doesn't. Dragon does not belong here. He's like, God, I won't release them, not without a fight. And so Dragon's just sitting down here going, this ought to be good. Again, I got to give props to this giant double page spread. God is appropriately giant and ominous and glowing with white light. And the devil, I love all the muscular rendering and the body hair and the lighting and the giant ugly hand. This all looks awesome. And it's also kind of cliche dialogue. I won't release them, not without a fight. Are God and the devil literally going to have a punch up in a comic book, like actually slugging each other? You bet your fucking ass they are. And I'm like, I remember reading this. Like, what year is this one? Let me double check. This is 96. I was 19 years old, 1 year out of high school. And I'm reading this book, and I'm like laughing, not at it, but with it. I'm like, this is so ridiculous. God and the devil literally punching at each other. So God slugs the devil in the face. So be it. Dragon's like, yeah, get him, God. And then the two villains are down. They're just kind of grunting. And then once again, going along with the Erik Larson will do shit that I never expected. And it's so funny. You could see it. The devil is kicking God in the nuts. Just a straight fucking shot to the balls. The devil's saying, you have no place here. Go back to your harp, choir boy. And God's just going, ugh. And then I have to give Erik Larson anatomical props. This shot of the devil with his back towards us and the shoulders and his upper body twisted one way, but then his hips twisted the other way so that his hips and his leg come forward. That twisting of the figure, like, it's perfect. It looks so fantastic. Sometimes I feel like you can tell when Erik Larson, or any artist, honestly, you can kind of tell when they're like really vibing and feeling the art and having a good time. I see that right there. It's so funny. I'm kind of debating on whether or not I was going to have just the cover be the thumbnail for the video, but should the shot of devil kicking God in the nuts be it? I mean, If you're watching this video, you've already seen the thumbnail, so I will have decided by then. But as of right now, I have not. But kicking him in the nuts. And Dragon, he's just like, look out, big guy. He's fighting dirty. Isn't that just like him? So the fiend, he's like, this is all your fault. None of this would have happened if not for you. So he jumps down at Dragon, trying to attack him. Dragon just jumps up and out of the way. He's not worried about it. And so then Dragon gets Arnold Dimple, the fiend, the former boyfriend of Debbie. He gets him down in an arm lock, holding him down on the ground. And Dragon says, I've been meaning to ask you, what was up with Debbie still being a virgin, stud? So kind of making fun that, the guy couldn't seal the deal. And so Mrs. Harris, she's like, that does it. Now you're really going to get it. Dragon saying, I wouldn't do that if I were you, babe. It seems I've got God on my side. I don't think he'd take too kindly on you pounding on his favorite son. Well, second favorite son. Back to God and the devil. Again, there's this little tiny shot of Dragon and the other two, just little guys. So to show that God and the devil are just massive. God's slugging, and he says, insolent whelp, how dare you deny the will of God? There's a protocol, devil. You require my consent to take this man's soul, and you're not getting it. So God socks him in the face again. And then there's a couple of panels where Dragon is observing that the mom, Mrs. Harris, is having a realization. It says it's starting to sink in. Her daughter is supposed to be in heaven, and if she ever wants to see her again, she has to get out of here. Fighting me isn't going to get her anywhere. Taking sides with the devil isn't going to do it. Not with God on my side. So Dragon's seeing that she's realizing she wants to be in heaven with her dead daughter, but if she's stuck in hell and God doesn't want to let her go, she's not going to get to be with her daughter. So Dragon actually offers up almost words of kindness. He says, just sit tight, honey. You don't want to get in it any deeper than you already are. So Dragon's showing just a little bit of kindness because he sees kind of the situation she's in, and he might have just a little bit of sympathy for her. It's a really interesting kind of character trait that Dragon has that I really like. Giant splash page. Dragon, God, just giant uppercut to the devil. It's interesting that the impact point looks like it's right on the devil's nuts right there, because that's his body arcing back. This is his leg coming forward. It's an interesting little focus right there. But yeah, God sends the devil flying. Of course, we get God Comics, circa 1941, artist unknown. And it's kind of this is a mock-up. I know that this isn't a real thing. God busting in because Hitler has Jesus up on a cross, literally nailing him to the cross. This is a mock-up that Larson did. To the religious, it's probably kind of blasphemous and insulting. To those of us with a sense of humor, because it's just a joke, pretty funny. But, so now, Dragon's sitting there, again, on a floating rock, saying he really knows how to hurt a guy. And so now, God is standing victorious and triumphant over the devil. God is saying, a word to the wise, devil. Make all the deals you want. Do whatever you think you must. Just remember, you owe everything to me. Your very existence is because I allow it. I made you, and if I so desire, I can destroy you. What comes next on the next page is one of my favorite things in a comic book I've ever seen. And again, it might not seem super impactful to you if, depending on what you've seen and what you kind of know about comics. But at the time, I thought this was one of the funniest things. A giant splash page, super serious. God is pointing a finger and he says, don't fuck with God. And I thought that was so hilarious. It's a great drawing, and putting the bad words in the mouth of the Almighty. It's like, it's so funny. It's so ridiculous. And then, because this is a double page spread, and Dragon's sitting there with the kind of this look of concern on his face. He's like, I'd listen to the guy. But that was funny. And I believe that I read later that there was a version of the book where the word fuck was censored. And man, I am so glad I did not accidentally get that. I wanted the real version. I always want the real uncensored version. But that is awesome. I love that right there. That was so great. It was just like so unbelievable. And I believe it created a little bit of controversy at the time when this book came out, because some people in some circles don't feel like you should, it's thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. I get it, but when you got a creator who doesn't believe in that stuff in the first place, but again, he's writing the character honestly, just because he put a cuss word in his mouth for comedic effect, I don't think it's a big deal. But now comes the other interesting part. Dragon actually gets to have a conversation with God. God just, again, his giant hand, and there's a little dragon. He says, as for you, and Dragon looks up at him, and he just starts like letting him know. He just kind of starts giving his opinion. Dragon says to God, look, pal, I don't mean to seem ungrateful, but what the hell is all this? What the hell is all this? Any idiot knows that God was created as a way of keeping the peasants in check. This whole thing is some stupid dream I'm having, and I keep getting caught up in it. Man created God. Everyone knows that. Hades was a garbage dump, and sinning was supposed to be like burning there. It's not a real place. Man created God, the devil, heaven, and hell. And God says, man is more powerful than you know. You have realized but a fraction of what every man is capable of. So their conversation continues. So Dragon says, okay, touchy subject. Granted, we don't have to talk about it. But I'm going to assume for a second that this whole bit is real. I've got your ear. I'd like to make the best of it. I've got a few questions. And God says, don't. And Dragon says, I heard you. I wasn't even thinking about asking about O.J. Simpson. I'm like, oh my God, of course. Topical for the time. Dragon says, I'm after some of that meaning of life stuff. And God says, the answer to that lies within. There is no one answer, no right answer. Dragon says, sheesh, well, that was evasive enough. All right, then, let's move on to religion. Wars have been fought and thousands have died for religious causes. I'd say millions. Which one religion is the real one? Which is the right one? Can you answer that? And God says, all of them and none of them are right. Dragon says, oh, come on, what a load of crap. What happens to a guy's soul when he dies? God says, whatever he believes happens. And Dragon says, why do I even bother? So God says, upon death, everyone was filled with an overwhelming sensation, a calming, overwhelming sensation that their beliefs were right, that their path was the correct one. Everyone creates their own heaven or hell, limbo or oblivion. Death is merely another step. Everyone's version of God is different, of heaven is different, and they are all correct. So Dragon says, you mean if I firmly believed that I'd spend the rest of eternity making mad, passionate love to a bevy of leggy supermodels, I'd get that? And God says, yes. And Dragon says, well, that takes a load off. I wonder if it's too late to instill that into the old. And then God interrupts. He says, it's yours to create. At this time, you're an atheist. If you continue to walk that path, your death will bring about your own oblivion. And Dragon says, I can live with that. So in terms of the theological discussion there, it'd be interesting if it kind of generated some conversation in the comment section. But I certainly don't agree necessarily that that's what things are. Whatever you think happens is what happens, because that makes everybody, like, even if you believe the most horrific thing, if you believe it, you get that. But it's a comic book. It's an interesting take. But what is interesting, and years, I'm talking decades later, Eric Larson pays off this one panel right here, because God says, whatever you believe is what you get. And Dragon says, if I believe that when I die, I get to spend the rest of my life fucking hot girls forever, that's what I'll get. I don't remember what issue it is, but years and years and years later, spoiler, Dragon dies. Because the comic is currently occupied by his son and his son's wife and their kids. Dragon's been dead for a long time. And in that issue, I'm sorry, I wish I have it. I have no idea where it is. I'd have to go looking, and it would be a huge pain in the ass. But when Dragon dies, there's this giant double-page spread of Dragon standing here, and then in the distance is this giant angelic heavenly castle. He walks up to it because he's in heaven. The doors open, and there's just an endless sea of hot girls waiting to fuck him, and he smiles. And that's the last you see of this version of the Savage Dragon. He gets what he believed in, and Eric Larson paid it off decades later. I laughed out loud, and there was this, like, the storyline comes full circle, and I was like, you know what? I don't like that the dragon character is dead, but he got what he wanted, and it's something that was set up in 1996. I think it was brilliant. It was hilarious, and I love that Eric Larson paid that off years and years later. For people who are reading the comic book and paying attention and remembered, it's like a little reward for you. You're like, this was set up, and he got it. But now that Dragon and God have had their conversation, the mother, she's like, well, what about me? I sold my soul to the devil to get revenge. Can my contract be broken? Can I go to heaven and see my little girl? What's going to happen to me? What about me? And God just says, go to hell. She screams and she falls into this pit and vanishes. She's gone. Dragon just looks. He looks up at this other precipice where Arnold Dimple, the fiend himself, he's looking, and he just dives off into the pit, gone. Again, spoilers, never to be seen again. The Fiend was like the most powerful, unbeatable villain that Dragon had ever faced. And the Fiend was the one character that beat Dragon repeatedly over and over and over. And now Dragon literally had to go to hell and have God on his side to beat him. But he did. So Dragon just kind of sitting there. He's like, well, now what? So God says, now you return home. Your time here has passed. Follow the path of righteousness. Believe in me, and I'll be seeing you. I like that. God's like, just be a good man, and you'll see me again. And Dragon's like, well, wait. Just one more question. Where did I come from? Because again, Dragon's origin has been a huge mystery. Where did he come from? Who is he? What's his origin? So he says, where did I come from? And God says, your parents conceived you, and then blinked out of existence, gone, done. Cut over to the, which was like a couple issues ago, the room where Dragon, his body was like chained up. This is where he was electrocuted and killed. And then this guy, this like devil worshiper who set up this thing to send Dragon's soul to hell, there's the dead body of the mother on the ground. But the devil worshiper guy, he's like, Heavenly Father, I beseech you. And there's a giant explosion. Boom. Implying that Dragon's coming back from the afterlife. Like, obviously, he's not going to be dead. And that's the end of the issue. Like, no kidding. When I read this, I'm like, Eric Larson just ramps this stuff up and makes it the biggest, silliest, funnest, most adventurous comic I've ever read. Never in any Wildcats comic are you going to see Grifter go to hell and watch God kick the devil in the nuts, or vice versa. It's just the most entertaining book that goes off in all these weird places, that has all the action and all the drama and all the humor and all the sexiness. It's everything is here. I don't get how anybody couldn't enjoy this thing just on a consistent basis. And this was like the pinnacle. Like you could almost end the entire comic right here with him in hell, getting rescued by by God himself. And then you could almost end the comic. Now, I'm not saying it should have. There's still a lot of great issues. Like, it's really good for a long time. But this was kind of like, for me, pinnacle of everything. It's just so great. I had so much fun with this. What sucks is I do get a lot of flack from some people. Again, granted, it's kind of limited, but some people who say that all I do is bitch about comics. They love it when I rant on things and I complain about things, and they find it entertaining. But there's a lot of people who hit me up and like, you're too negative, man. You need to have a positive outlook. I'm like, well, instantly, you're some motherfucker who doesn't watch my channel consistently, and that's fine. By no means does anybody have to. But like, no one watches my videos on Savage Dragon, for example, or Planetary. Everyone watches my videos on a Liefeld comic, and I get lots of views, and I'm always ripping on those books because they fucking suck. But when I get a book that's brilliant and well done, and I'm hyped about it, and I'm passionate about it, and I think it's great, and I love it, and I want people to see it, and I express my love for this storytelling format, this art form that we all have access to, and that I make my own comics of, when I'm positive about it, fucking no one watches. No one watches it. So they only see what they perceive to be the negative. And I'm kind of digging my own grave on that one. It's kind of my own fault in a way, and that's fine. I can live with it. But I will never stop hyping up how much fun Savage Dragon is. You know, like this and Planetary and Tom Strong, which, God, I got to get back to Tom Strong. It's been like 4 or 5 months since I looked at an issue of that. That's on me. But there's plenty of books that I like, but I also look at them objectively and try to like, well, I don't think this works, but let's just talk objectively about it. And again, comics are subjective. It's art. You love it, great. If I don't, doesn't mean you can't. So anyway, I really appreciate everyone who goes with me on these journeys and watches these with me and has fun with me. Thank you. It means the world to me. I really appreciate it. I've gotten to know a lot of good people, made a lot of friends, and starting this YouTube channel has been, I've said this before, but it's been the most creatively rewarding thing I've ever done. And it's nice to see that it's kind of successful and it's going forth and continuing to create opportunities for me in my own little personal comic book creating world, and the opportunity to meet people, just friends out there, just regular people who are just watching and doing their own thing. I've had the opportunity to talk with several industry professionals, and they're all awesome. I've had nothing but incredible conversations with a bunch of great guys, made friends. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. And that's all I've got for now. And I'll see you next time.